What is GDP? The acronym GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. This is the value of all products and services that are produced in a country during a certain period of time. The gross in GDP means that depreciation, this is the decrease in the value of assets, is not taken into account. When depreciation is taken into account, the result is called net domestic product. Domestic product means all goods produced and services provided within a particular country, either by nationals or by foreigners. GDP is a measure for the performance of a national economy. There are two indicators that matter. First, the entire value added of the national economy. That's GDP, period. And second, GDP divided by the number of people living in a particular country. That's GDP per capita. We speak of nominal GDP if these two indicators are calculated at current market prices. Every price increase then raises nominal GDP, even if production and consumption do not expand. An inflation rate of 3%, for example, automatically increases nominal GDP by 3% as well. In order to correct for this and to allow for GDP comparisons, irrespective of inflation, real GDP is calculated. In this case, the overall value added of a national economy is measured by the prices of a given base year. This makes it possible to compare real GDP country by country, region by region, but also over longer periods of time. We call the change of GDP economic growth when real GDP is rising, and we call it recession when real GDP declines. Although GDP is used as an indicator for growth and prosperity, many factors that we normally think of when speaking of our standard of living are not considered. What is not taken into account, for example, is the distribution of income and wealth or losses caused by environmental degradation. However, a difference is made with respect to what I can buy for the respective GDP per capita. For this reason, international comparisons distinguish between A, GDP per capita at current exchange rates, and B, GDP per capita that takes purchasing power into account. The latter is necessary because with $100 we can buy a lot more in Africa than in the US or in Europe. Global GDP was around $72 trillion in 2012. Almost half of this GDP jointly came from the European Union with 25% and the US with 22% of global GDP. The next largest economies are currently China with 12% and Japan with 8% of global GDP. The ranking was not always like this. Until the early 19th century, Asia, especially China and India, held the largest shares in global GDP. With the Industrial Revolution, at first Great Britain and then Germany advanced, and with the strong immigration from overseas, the US also gained economic weight rapidly. In the 20th century, the US and the countries of Western Europe were the determining forces of the global economy. But in the 21st century, Asia will again become number one among the world's economic regions.